the Indus Waters Treaty is often described as one of the most successful water sharing agreements in the modern history. But many people do not fully understand why it became so necessary in the first place.
This is, first of all, not a treaty. What did we get? India got all the eastern rivers. Pakistan got nothing.
Most people associate the treaty, you said that it's not a treaty, but they associate the treaty with India, Pakistan, and the World Bank. But very few people know about David Lilienthal's role.
Pakistan also gave India the permission to build as many hydropower structures on the western rivers.
One argument made by some historians is that India had already begun, you have also mentioned about this, that India had already begun investing in major hydraulic infrastructure before even the Indus Waters Treaty was signed.
In 1948, India committed a war crime by shutting down the canals leading from India into Pakistan.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Our guest today is Dr. Hassan Abbas, who is a leading water expert. He holds a PhD in hydrology and water resources from Michigan State University, USA, and has worked in the water sector across 3 continents. His work also focuses on international law and regional geopolitics, with particular expertise on the Indus Waters Treaty and the South Asia's water challenges. In Pakistan, he was also appointed as the country's first UNESCO chair for integrated water resources management. Dr. Abbas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Sir, we will largely discuss the Indus Waters Treaty today. And in that regard, my first question to you is that the Indus Waters Treaty is often described as one of the most successful water sharing agreements in the modern history. But many people do not fully understand why it became so necessary in the first place. Could you please walk us through the historical events between the partition in 1947 and the signing of the treaty in 1960 and explain that what problem it was actually designed to solve?
Okay, that's a very good question. The first thing, the preamble that goes with the treaty is that it is one of the most successful treaties in the world. Or maybe some people say it's one of the best treaties in the world. It lasted for 66 years or so. But I have a very different opinion on this treaty. This is, first of all, not a treaty. Because if I walk through the historical events between 1947 and 1960, during the time it was so-called negotiated, those events are very, clear on what were the demands of India and what was the position of Pakistan against those demands. Now, in 1948, India committed a war crime by shutting down the canals leading from India into Pakistan and serving the civilian population for food production. So those canals were shut down. This was a war crime or a crime against humanity. If the war was not going on, then it was a crime against humanity. Either way, it could have been tried in the International Criminal Court. The criminals were the then Chief Minister of Punjab in India, in Indian Punjab. He ordered the closure of canals. And the second accused was Mr. Nehru, who actually endorsed this decision of the Chief Minister. Now, this is where the thing started. They shut down the canals and they said very clearly that now after partition, Ravi, Vyas and Satluj, these 3 rivers which are termed as eastern rivers in context of Indus Waters Treaty, they said these rivers are now proprietary right of India and India can do whatever they want to do with these rivers, and Pakistan's dependence on these rivers. Pakistan, in order to, for Pakistan, in order to, compensate for the dependence on these rivers, should build link canals from the western rivers, which were Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. Pakistan should build link canals and feed their population from the water of the western rivers, and India will take away all these rivers. Now, that was the stance, that was their position in 1948. Pakistan's position was at that time that no, we are already users of these rivers, and as per international law, we are the prior users. And 70% of water of those rivers is already being used in Pakistan, so it should continue as such. So that was the starting position of the two countries. After
Okay.
so-called 12 years of negotiations, what did we get? India got all the eastern rivers, Pakistan got nothing, and Pakistan started building link canals. So what did we gain in those 12 years? Nothing. Absolutely zero. And what did India gain? 100% of her original position that they declared in 1948. Now,
Okay.
so this was not a treaty, this was a capture. This was a surrender because we did not gain anything. And not only this, after 12 years of negotiations, not only that Pakistan capitulated to 100% demands of India, which were declared in 1948, Pakistan also gave India the permission to build as many hydropower structures on the western rivers, which India never demanded in 1948. Because everything, all the water which could have been diverted was diverted by India, and whatever could not be diverted, which was the western rivers protected by geography, India got permission to build hydropower dams on that. And the third and the most lethal thing which happened to Pakistan was that India, after 12 years of negotiations, also got the permission to dump unlimited amount of pollution in Ravi and Satluj rivers as they enter into Pakistan. So what did Pakistan get? Nothing
Nothing.
more than nothing against the 1948 position of India, plus unlimited pollution, plus permission for unlimited damming by India. So this was not a treaty. This was a surrender of magnanimous proportions. Number two, why it is not a treaty? Because Pakistan's decision makers were not agreeing to this formula, which was being again hampered upon by the World Bank as well, because in 1953, no, 1954, World Bank gave their own formula. And in that formula, they gave India 100% of the eastern rivers, which means World Bank agreed to give India 100% of their position in 1948 and asked India not to take anything from the western rivers. And India agreed to it. And this formula was given by General Wheeler of the World Bank, and that I think it was February of 1954 when this formula
Okay.
came up. And as early as March of 1954, Indians Lok Sabha ratified it. So India never wanted anything more than the eastern rivers and nothing from the western rivers. And there was no demands of dumping pollution in Pakistan. But Pakistan did not agree to this formula because Pakistan said that we have a right, a legal right on these rivers. We cannot forego our legal right, which was according to the international law. And the negotiations continued after 1954. By
Okay.
1958, Sikandar Mirza, our president, he was not agreeing to yield the right of Pakistan on the eastern rivers. But then came martial law, and Mr. Ayub Khan took over, and he agreed to all the demands of India, and he moved on to sign the treaty. And when and that was actually, at that time, it was a condition by the World Bank on Pakistan, because Pakistan wanted to build a dam on Jhelum and a dam on Indus. And for that, World Bank had agreed to give loan to Pakistan. But before actually materializing that loan, World Bank asked Pakistan to sign the treaty or sign an agreement with India that all the works that World Bank has done so far in India, which were actually stopping the waters of Pakistan, Now, this is something also very interesting because
Hmm.
when you start negotiation over a dispute, then until the negotiations are not concluded, you are not allowed to move on with the projects. But
Yeah.
India kept on building their projects to take full control of the eastern rivers. They almost had completed Bhagra Dam, which was a mega dam started in 1948. They had almost completed it by 1960. They had built Nangal Dam, which was again completed by I think 1954. They had built Rupar Barrage. They had built a number of link canals. They had started building Rajasthan Canal. So all those things were happening before even a treaty was signed, before even a pact was reached. So all of that was against the international laws. And
Hmm.
obviously, World Bank was financing some of those projects, and World Bank did not want to be part of any litigation if Pakistan goes to the international court demanding their rights. So World Bank said that, okay, I will give you loan for these two dams, and by the way, that loan was huge. And but before that, you have to sign this treaty with India.
Okay.
And the understanding at that point in time was that whatever was the World Bank's formula, in which India was only getting the eastern rivers. But now, when Indians realized that now Pakistan wants to get that huge sum of money in terms of loans, Pakistan wants to sign the treaty. And then they came up with more demands. They said, okay, before you were not getting any dams, so now you are getting dams on the Indus rivers, western rivers. Therefore, we will also build dams on the western rivers. So they got the permission to build unlimited number of hydropower dams, and they got the permission to make a storage of up to 3.5 million acres, and they got the permission to use waters of the western rivers for irrigation and domestic use. And they also added another clause that they will dump all their pollution into Ravi and Satluj through four wastewater drains which were named in the treaty. And that is how we got all those drains and we lost our full control of the western rivers as well. And
Hmm.
on top of it, why this was not a treaty? Because this was not signed as an international treaty. It was signed, this agreement was signed as an annexure to the funding agreement between World Bank and Pakistan. So all World Bank wanted was that they should let off the hook if ever Pakistan goes in an international court claiming their rights on the eastern rivers. Therefore, World Bank wanted to have that annexure within their funding agreement that, okay, whatever they did in India was according to the wills and wishes and agreement of Pakistan. And this went as an annexure to the funding agreement.
Okay.
In this so called treaty, there are annexures within the treaty. And the last annexure, which is Annexure H, is about as long as the rest of the treaty and all its annexures are combined. And that was what the World Bank wanted. Before Annexure H, anything in the treaty, World Bank had almost nothing to do. Only Annexure H was what World Bank wanted, and that was the longest annexure. And in that, World Bank wanted to ensure that India, being the upper riparian, should not do any disruption in the projects that were being built in Pakistan by the World Bank. So India, being upper riparian, could actually release
Hmm.
water at once or do any kind of hanky panky. So World Bank wanted that nothing by India should be done as long as the World Bank's projects are taking place in Pakistan. And during that time, War of 1965 and War of 1971 happened, and India, because of that annexure H, did not harm the projects which were being done by the World Bank in Pakistan. Like Tarbela Dam, Mangla Dam, they were built during the wars, but because of
Okay.
annexure H, it survived. And another thing which does not make it a treaty when it was signed was that it was signed the document was signed in 1960, but in 1962, India took it to the Register of International Convention, to the UN Register of International Treaties, and at that time, Pakistan did not object because the document contained the signatures of the heads of the states. Therefore, it was accepted in the UN register as an international treaty. Pakistan never objected to it, and this is how it became an international treaty, not on the day in 1960 when it was signed between India and Pakistan. So
Hmm.
this is the chronology of the treaty and its reality, which is not known to most people, not just in Pakistan and India, but in the rest of the world as well. Nobody knows it, or very few people know it.
So, yeah, you have so perfectly and clearly explained it, which leads me to another misconception that most people associate the treaty. You said that it's not a treaty, but they associate the treaty with India, Pakistan, and the World Bank. But very few people know about David Lilienthal's role in proposing a basin-wide solution. How influential was his vision, and to what extent did Cold War geopolitics shape the agreement?
I think this is a very, very interesting question. Uh,
Okay.
this guy Lilienthal that you named, I think you must have known about him, but just for the benefit of the audience,
Yeah, yeah.
I will briefly explain. This Mr. Lilienthal was a public servant in the USA. He was a very brilliant guy. He held two presidential appointments. He was head of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, followed by another presidential appointment in which he was head of the Tennessee Valley Authority. Now,
Okay.
Tennessee Valley Authority is like WAPDA. Actually, WAPDA has been made on the model of the Tennessee Valley Authority. So this was
Okay.
an organization that Mr. Lilienthal headed. By profession and by training, Mr. Lilienthal was a lawyer. I think he was a Harvard graduate in law, and he was a very brilliant guy. So in 1950, I think he resigned from his public service, and he moved on. And his reason for resignation was that he said that I want to now uh, do some business for myself and my family, and I have done enough of public service. So I'm not interested in doing public service anymore. I want to earn some money. And while working for this Tennessee Valley Authority, he learned the ropes of contracting, because Tennessee Valley Authority and US Bureau of Reclamation, they used to work together. They used to go in different countries of the world and offer them dams and canals and hydropower projects. That was soon after the Bretton Woods, when World Bank and IMF came to being, and they wanted to have more control on the global financial finances. And one of the way to gain control was that you give loan to a developing country in US dollars, and the loan should be so big that the country cannot easily return it, and then their central banks become subservient to a debt cycle, with which the neocolonialism way of controlling the economies of the third world and the developing countries, and that is how the things were going on. So World Bank was actually actively looking for investments in different countries for mega projects, because a mega project is a project which would actually serve their purpose, not a small little project. And one of the favorites of these mega projects were large hydropower projects and dam building and storage projects, water storage projects. So
Mm.
David E. Lilienthal, he had his own company. I think the company was called D&C or D&R, something like that. And that company, at the time negotiations were going on between Pakistan and India, was working in India on the projects which were diverting eastern rivers away from Pakistan. So there was a very clear conflict of interest from that aspect. Mr. Lilienthal was also a consultant with Lazard Frères. That was an international investment consultant. And Lazard Frères, in turn, was a consultant to the World Bank. And
Okay.
Mr. Lilienthal, he came to India and Pakistan in 1951. He wrote two essays in the Collier magazine, and he argued in those two essays. I'm mixing up the two essays, but generally, what he
Yeah.
argued in two essays was
Yeah.
he approached the whole problem between India and Pakistan from the angle of Cold War.
Okay.
And it is said that before visiting India and Pakistan, Mr. Lilienthal was briefed by the Department of U.S. Department of Foreign Service or something like that. So he had that briefing before he came here. Apparently, during Cold War, everything was done undercover and with different cover stories. Apparently, Mr. Lilienthal's visit to India and Pakistan was financed by Courier magazine. He came here as a US citizen, not as any official representative of USA or the World Bank. He just came here as a US citizen. Collier's assignment given to him apparently was to go around in the two countries and inform the American people by writing essays in their magazine as to what is going on between those two newly independent states in that part of the world. So that was the cover story. And Mr. Lilienthal, he wrote two essays. First essay was titled, Are We Losing India? In that essay, he argued that since the uh, finishing of World War II, the two blocks had emerged. One was communist bloc and the other was capitalist bloc. And capitalist
Mm.
bloc belonged to USA and the communist bloc belonged to Russia. So the world was becoming multipolar or
Yeah.
dipolar. So in that he argued that India, he argued that China has already declared soon after their independence that they will be following the socialist system.
Yeah.
Whereas India had not yet declared her intentions, what way they want to go. And Lilienthal argued that if we also lose India, as we have lost China, then we will lose Asia. And come what may, we should not let India drift into communist bloc.
Okay.
He also wrote about Kashmir. He wrote that we will be disappointed if Kashmir joins Pakistan. He ridiculed the idea of plebiscite by calling it counting noses in Kashmir. Instead of writing counting heads, he used the term counting noses in Kashmir. So he clearly ridiculed it. He also
Okay.
said in his essay that uh, Kashmir is a gateway for Red Tibet, Red China, and Communist Russia to get into the fertile resources of India and Pakistan and all the way to Arabian Sea. So that's where the warm water things comes up. So he said that the dispute between Pakistan and India on waters is neither religious nor political. This dispute is only it has only two dimensions. One is the financial dimension and other is the engineering dimensions. And he suggested that the basin should be managed as a whole and it should be decided by the engineers and the financiers how to go about it. And after writing these essays, he wrote a letter to the president of the World Bank. Then it was called the Bank of Reconstruction and Development, International Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Eugene Black was the president. He writes a letter to Eugene Black advising him that there are business opportunities for the bank in the dispute between India and Pakistan on water resources, and he must write to the prime ministers of the two countries and offer them the offices of the World Bank to come and talk about it. So, this is where his role as an investment consultant to Lazard Frères and to World Bank comes in, his own company was already working in India on the projects which were diverting Pakistan's waters away into India, and there were clear conflicts of interest. And the British memoirs, Alice Albania in her book has mentioned some British memoirs in which it was identified that Mr. Lilienthal had clear conflict of interest in whatever he is suggesting. But those conflict of interest were immaterial as long as the Cold War objectives and the investment objectives of the World Bank were being served. So they ignored those conflict of interest and they closely monitored what was going on, but never objected to the conflict of interest of Mr. Lilienthal. So this is what was the role of Mr. Lilienthal. Yes.
Again, very perfectly, very clearly explained. Thank you so much for this. My next question to you is that one argument made by some historians is that India had already begun. You have also mentioned about this, that India had already begun investing in major hydraulic infrastructure before even the Indus Waters Treaty was signed. Fundamentally, it also changed the balance of control over the eastern rivers. My question is that how should we understand the relationship between infrastructure, diplomacy, and the bargaining power?
Okay, I think Pakistan was not that bad in terms of her position in order to negotiate a good treaty.
Okay.
But we made a lot of mistakes.
Hmm.
One of the things we did was that every time India started a new structure or embarked on a new project, Pakistan objected and Pakistan threatened to go to the international courts,
Hmm.
and Pakistan was pacified by another tranche of loan and another
Yeah.
project. 1952, we got the first tranche and the first project, that was Kotri Barrage,
Hmm.
and Pakistan was prevented from going into the international court. Actually, when Mr. Eugene Black, the president of the IBRD, when he wrote to when he wrote his first letter to Jawaharlal Nehru and Liaquat Ali Khan, it was the exact same text for the two prime ministers, and it just offered the good offices of the World Bank to come and talk about their water dispute. No strings attached, just an offer to come and use their offices. Liaquat Ali agreed, followed by Nehru, he also agreed. But Lilienthal is an interesting guy. He wrote two very important things in his essays. He wrote something about Liaquat Ali Khan and he wrote something about Nehru. About Nehru, he writes that Nehru told me, now this is what Lilienthal is writing. He says that Nehru told me that a politician, an honest politician like Gandhi or a prophet would always follow the truth. But I am neither Gandhi nor a prophet, and I will be working on day-to-day basis. He goes on to write that Nehru is a wonderful guy, and as long as Nehru is there in India, US can set up very nice trajectory of their relations with India, which will go a very long way. About Liaquat Ali, he writes that he is a mild-mannered and soft-spoken person, but
Yeah.
his words are as strong for the case as the words can be. Something like that he writes about Liaquat Ali Khan. He doesn't say that he is a good person, he would be useful for establishing relations and blah, blah, blah. He just says that his words carry conviction and very strong, although he is a soft-spoken and a mild-mannered person. Then when Eugene Black writes the letter arrives in Pakistan and in India in the September of 1951. Then in October of 1951, Liaquat Ali Khan was assassinated. And in November of 1951, the second letter comes from the World Bank, which puts some conditions that, okay, you want to come and negotiate, use our offices. Uh, I think there were 6 things that they wrote, but one of the most important, or two of the most important things were that we will not talk about the past. We will only talk about future. And as long as these offices are being used for negotiation, no one will go to the international court. What did that mean? Our strongest, uh, I would say, point was our legal right.
Okay.
And we had to forfeit that legal right in order to come and negotiate with India in the offices of the World Bank. So we had to forego our strongest point, which was our legal right. And legal right, besides being legal right, it relates to past because it was our prior use. And if we agree that we will not talk about past and we will only talk about future, that means we will not even be talking during the negotiation with the World Bank that we had some rights in the past. So you cannot go to the courts demanding your rights, and you cannot even discuss your rights during the negotiations. And probably if Liaquat Ali Khan was there, he would not have agreed to these terms. But he was assassinated just 3 weeks
Hmm.
before these conditions came in. And then there was, I mean, the top level of Pakistan was in doldrums. Every now and then, a new prime minister would come in and take oath and then go, and another one will come in. So that was the kind of situation Pakistan was going through at the top, whereas India, on the other hand, was very stable. One government, one congressman running the show. So that is
Okay.
how we got into that mess, which was actually at the end sealed by a dictator who was just sold off because of the loan tranche that he wanted to get from the World Bank.
Okay. Best. Uh, okay, so I wanted to ask you something about the international law. We know that there is an established understanding that international treaties ultimately depend on the political will. If a stronger upper riparian state like India decides to disregard legal obligations, what practical enforcement mechanisms actually exist? Does the interwater treaties reveal the limits of the international law when it collides with the hard geopolitics?
Okay, this is a very interesting question once again. Uh, International law, international conventions, the decisions of international court, and and all those things,
Hmm.
they are in some cases obligatory, in some cases they are not obligatory
Yeah.
uh, by the nations, and they follow those laws, those conventions, those treaties in good faith. There is no mechanism worldwide, internationally available, where you can actually enforce those decisions and those conventions and those laws by any force. The best that we have seen is use of economic sanctions,
Hmm.
and then economic sanctions work for a countries whose currency is strong, and the other country being sanctioned is dependent on the currency of that country.
Hmm.
You know what I'm referring to? I'm referring to the US
Yes.
currency.
Yeah.
And this is what happened in Bretton Woods. That in 1944 in Bretton Woods there were 44 countries who decided that US dollar would be the global currency. And those
Yeah.
were all big countries of the world. So smaller countries don't even matter. So when
Hmm.
44 countries of the world they agreed that US dollar would be the international currencies, all currencies would be pegged to the US dollar, and the US dollar, they gave them the guarantee that it would be pegged to the gold. And at that time, 35 US dollar was pegged with 1 ounce of gold. That was the that was the arrangement. And this arrangement lasted until Nixon, I think in 1971 or 72, he delinked gold with the US dollar.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
but why I'm mentioning this 1944 and 1971 or 72, that this was the time during which all the mayhem took place in between India and Pakistan, all that things related to Indus Water Treaty and all the projects related to Indus Water Treaty. took place in Pakistan and India. So this is something very pertinent. So sanctions would only work when you are dependent on the currency of another country. Otherwise, even sanctions don't work. We have seen now that, for example, yuan is taking power. It's
Yeah.
not kind of replacing, but it's also getting powerful. So
Yes.
countries, dealing in yuan, they are kind of getting immune to such kind of measures as well. So all the international conventions and all the international laws and treaties are followed in good faith. And if you do not follow it in good faith, you clearly violate it. You demonstrate that you are a violator of a treaty that you signed. What does it make you? It makes you a rogue state. And you
Yes.
present yourself as a rogue state. And
Hmm.
nobody likes to do business with a rogue state. Nobody wants to get into agreements with a rogue state. So if you do that, you are damaging yourself politically as well as economically, because all the treaties that are signed between the countries, most of those treaties are related to trade and commerce. There are very few
Hmm.
which are relating to this, like water sharing treaties or border, and they are very few. Most of the international conventions are related to trade and commerce. And if India demonstrates that they do not honor treaties, people will be careful, because any new business that India wants to start involving other countries, that would add a risk of the breach of a treaty. And that risk is to be covered by the insurance companies.
Hmm.
For example, if Pakistan goes to the international court and wins a case against whatever project they are proposing, like for example, this tunnel, this Chenab Bias tunnel. For
Okay.
example, when India floats standards for building of these tunnels, they do not have a tunnel boring machine. They do not even make generators and bulldozers and that kind of heavy machinery. So any international business providing machinery to India for this project could also be subjected to international law, and their executives to could be called in the International Court of Justice or in International Criminal Court for complying with something which is unlawful internationally. And no business would like to be part of a litigation as an accused. So most of the companies would refuse actually collaborating and cooperating with them on this project, or for that matter, other international projects. So it is not that if the court decides that they will not build that project, they want to build it anyway, there's no way of stopping that. But then there are indirect consequences. Any case, as per international law, that we win against them has political implications and has economic implications, and has diplomatic implications. And we should be very good at diplomacy in projecting our victory versus India on all legal grounds, and that would help us uh, declare ourselves as the law abiding citizens of the world in the community of nations, and India the opposite of it.
Okay. Okay. So, if I ask you specifically about Pakistan, for decades, Pakistan has largely framed the water security or water insecurity as an external issue centered mainly on India. But do you feel that the greater challenge today is domestic, or for example, issues like poor irrigation, efficiency, lack of efficiency, groundwater depletion, inadequate storage capacity, and also the weak governance? Have we focused too much on geopolitics and too little on the reform at home?
Okay, again, this is a very complicated question,
Yeah.
because when we focus our water security on whatever India is doing, That is one thing. It is
mm,
one of the significant factors. We
okay.
can't say that it doesn't apply. This is one of the significant factors. Uh, and I will explain it a little bit more. It is
Yeah,
not
sure.
significant in a sense that we usually say that India released floods, India withheld water. That is not the case. That is not where we are being impacted. We had been impacted in 1960 as much as we could have been impacted. So neither they can release floods nor they can withhold floods. Floods are the waters which exceed the capacity of their engineered structures and overflow into Pakistan. They just can't hold it. So this is a
Mm,
wrong rhetoric that India released water like it happened last year,
yes.
2025.
Yeah.
So India could not hold that water, and the water had nowhere to go but flow into the old riverbeds and come down into Pakistan. Because if India releases a big wave of flood, which actually they can't, but say for example they hypothetically they release a big wave of water to destroy Pakistan or to harm Pakistan, before that wave reaches Pakistan, it would destroy a couple of 100 kilometers in India. So why would
Okay.
they drown their own people? Just
Mm,
that some of us would also be in trouble, because the major force of the wave is dissipated in India. By the time it reaches us, it's calm and quiet, only a big volume of water. So they can't do that. But somehow we give some kind of a godly status to that country, that they would withhold water. They will, whatever water they could withhold, we allowed them in 1960. And whatever they could not withhold is protected by geography and not by treaty. So that water will keep coming. Not even more than 1 to 2% of fiddling is possible by India. Even if they build huge mega projects, that fiddling will not exceed more than 1 to 2%. Even if you go to 5%, that's a very exaggerated figure, but even if you go to 5%, that is not actually threatening our life and blood. That is not threatening our lifelines. So we are not
okay.
going to die if somebody withholds or plays with 5% of water. So
Mm,
that scare is not there. But then I said that there is a big part that is being played by India towards our water security. And that is something which our water managers and so far our decision makers are very reluctant to talk about. And that is the pollution which is being dumped in our freshwater resources by India. Article 4 of the treaty, paragraphs 4 and 5, have names of four drains which will continue to flow into Pakistan with irrigation drainage, domestic drainage, industrial drainage, and all kind of drainage completely untreated, and will keep flowing into Pakistan according to the treaty. And Pakistan will maintain at their own cost the maintenance of those drains to a capacity which those drains had on the effective date of the treaty, which is reckoned as 1st of April 1960. So the size of those drains which was there on the 1st of April 1960, Pakistan at her own expenses will maintain those drains for that size. And then para 5 of Article 4 says that if India wants to put more affluents and drainage in those drains, Pakistan will widen it or deepen it as required. So Pakistan cannot even restrict India, or for that matter, this treaty doesn't even restrict India on what amount of water they will uh, throw in Pakistan, the sewerage water, and also What is the quality of that water? Again, there is no cap on it. Currently, they are throwing all the domestic waste completely untreated, all the human waste completely untreated, all the industrial waste, all the agricultural waste. Their major city centers in East Punjab and Haryana are just putting everything in those drains and they enter into Pakistan and Pakistan is taking them. Now, where those drains are going in Pakistan? They enter in the beds of Ravi and Satluj. Satluj has one of the major barrages right on the border, which is Suleiman Ki barrage. And behind every barrage, there is a big pool of water or a lake, and two of those drains named in the treaty, Fazilka drain and Salim Shah drain. They directly drain into that pool of water, which is then being fed into the irrigation system of Pakistan in South Punjab. And those drains are not trivial, and the pollution they are bringing is very nasty.
Yeah.
And consequently, our children are getting sick. Stunt growth, liver failure, kidney failure, blindness, skin
Yeah.
disease, name it, and it's there. South Punjab, a place where our children are suffering from stint growth despite having enough food. There is no hunger in South Punjab per se, but still there is stint growth. And it is because of those poisons which are being dumped by India
Mhm.
into our rivers and into
Yeah.
our food system. And this is a crime. This is a crime against humanity. This is a human rights violation. This is an environmental crime. And lo and behold, this is a war crime. You are poisoning the water of your adversary. So that is one aspect that is impacting our water resources and our water security. And that we must bring it on the table. The other part that you said, mismanagement, yes, that is our internal things. Internally, our system of water management is centuries old. It is still flood irrigation in the agriculture sector, which consumes more than 90% of the water. Our system in the domestic water supply is again in a very bad shape. Our groundwater is completely mismanaged. There is no modernization, even in thinking, even in policy making in Pakistan. We are not thinking of modernizing our agriculture systems. We are still dumping all the pollution within our rivers. Lahore dumps everything in Ravi, Sialkot, Gujranwala. Gujranwala also dumps in Ravi, Sialkot and Gujarat and Wazirabad. They dump everything in Chenab. These are major cities with millions of people. Jhelum is in dumping everything in Jhelum. And if you come to
Mhm.
Indus, your capital city is dumping everything in the Indus. Peshawar is ultimately dumping everything is in Indus. So this is how it is. And as you move down, Multan, Bawalpur, Hyderabad, Sakhar, everything is being dumped in our rivers, which are supposed to be our rivers for producing water, for producing food, and for drinking. So we are actually polluting our water resources
Mhm.
at home as well. And probably why we are so insensitive to the pollution coming from India, because we are doing the same thing. Although the intensity of that pollution is very high, which is coming from India,
Mhm.
yet we are insensitive to it. Our water managers are insensitive to it. Our decision makers are insensitive to it. And that is one of the biggest problems. We have polluted our aquifers, we have polluted our rivers, and we have not yet moved on from the age old, centuries old structural systems which are
Yeah.
not compatible with the current environment of climate change.
Yes. Sir, we're a little short on time. My last question to you is that India has declared the Indus Water Treaties to be in abeyance, but Pakistan maintains that the treaty cannot be unilaterally suspended under the international law. From a legal and a hydrological perspective, what practical consequences does this have today? Uh,
Okay, whatever consequences, it depends on Pakistan. Because
okay.
whether India holds it in so called abeyance,
Yeah.
India follows it, or India doesn't follow it, the water will keep flowing the way it is flowing at the moment.
Hmm.
Because if India is not adhering to the treaty, India is not polluting our rivers more than the treaty could had allowed. So they are polluting. They cannot withhold more water than the treaty allows, and the western rivers which are protected by geography will be kept protected by geography. India can't do anything about it. So India,
Okay.
whether they follow the treaty or they don't follow the treaty, it doesn't impact us and it doesn't impact them, because whatever we had to lose, we have lost. And we can't lose more, they cannot gain more. So, treaty or no treaty, the water will keep on flowing the way it is flowing at the moment. What Pakistan
Okay.
can do, Pakistan can take an advantage of this mistake, or thankful mistake, by Mr. Modi, that he is violating the treaty. Pakistan should
Hmm.
immediately move on all legal fronts and encircle India legally. Pakistan should get out of the treaty as soon as possible, so that Pakistan can launch cases against India on the international laws and conventions, because none of the international laws permits pollution.
Hmm.
Latest is
Hmm.
the Berlin Rules. You go back a little backward, 1997, UN Convention on Water, 1996, sorry, 1992 is another UNEP Convention on Water.
Yeah.
Then Helsinki rules. Then go back, and even 1948, which is pre-treaty thing. 1948 Bogota Declaration, and before that, I think 1913 is Madrid Declaration, and there is another Montevideo Declaration, 1933. So all those things are available to Pakistan as legal instruments of preventing India from polluting our rivers, and we can reclaim our forfeited rights of the three rivers that we gave to India. We have a very strong legal case that as long as the treaty is there, we cannot file. We cannot file against pollution because we have agreed to it. We cannot file against the three rivers where we forfeited our rights, because our legal case about regaining the waters from the eastern rivers is that India said during the treaty negotiations that they don't want these rivers for irrigating in Punjab. They want these three rivers for irrigating in Rajasthan for their future bread basket. Now, after 66 years of treaty, India spent billions of dollars and built more than 10,000 kilometers of canals in about 4 million acres of Rajasthan desert. And today, that 4 million acre is still 99% desert. And their canals have completely failed in that part of the world. That proof is so loud and clear. It can be seen by satellites, it can be seen by going on ground, it can be seen by Google images, that that place is still a desert. And then there are scientific instruments like moisture index, vegetation index, which is collected by the satellites. They tell us that the place is still 99% desert. So since they failed in utilizing those rivers for the purpose they took it from us, we could have a counterclaim now, reclaiming our rights and also asking them to compensate us by diverting those rivers, destroying our environment. and violating all the human rights. So they should pay us a compensation and return us our rivers. So those are the kind of things that we must embark on. And the first thing Pakistan must do is get out of this treaty.
Okay. Okay. So on this note, sir, thank you so much for so flawlessly explaining the Indus Waters Treaty or no treaty. And you have cleared out almost all the misunderstandings and the falsely built narratives over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.